What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It is time to give you my official bowl game predictions for the 2024-25 college football season, also known as the postseason. The postseason is finally upon us. Beside the playoff games, there are a ton of bowl games going on out there. Not a ton of bowl games like we used to have because we don't really have the New Year's Six bowls anymore. Those will be going on in the playoff this year because of the 12-team playoff. So I picked out 10 bowl games, in my opinion, that are really big, just like the top 10 bowl games from yesterday. But this is going to be a lot different compared to where the top 10 bowl games were. These are 10 of the biggest bowl games that I did pick out, and I am going to make predictions on all these games. So let's go ahead and jump right into it, and we will start here from, the best bowl, from the least bowl games all the way down to like maybe the biggest bowl games. Maybe that's how the list goes down, but we'll go right here and we'll start from the Music City Bowl. It's Iowa taking on Missouri. A Big Ten versus SEC matchup in the Music City Bowl. This will take place on December the 30th at 2:30 p.m. on ESPN. Missouri favored by a field goal, also known as 3 points, and the over and under sitting at 40.5. So we're not expecting a lot of points to be scored here between both of these teams. I didn't really watch a lot of Iowa this year in their football season. All I know is they are a quiet 8-4 team, and I don't really know much about them. We know that Cade McNamara did transfer out here for Iowa, so the quarterback position may be a little bit of concern, but the offense is not really, it's looked good at times, and then sometimes it's looked bad at times. But then you look at Missouri, obviously, it's been an up and down year for Missouri. They've been in the top 25 pretty much throughout the entire year. They're going after another 10-win season here in back-to-back years under Eli Drinkwitz. I think this will be a competitive, hard-fought game. I think it probably is a low-scoring type game, again, according to that over and under. But I got to go with Missouri here. I just think Missouri, obviously with a better offense and, defense might be an advantage for Iowa, but I think it probably comes down to turnovers for both of these teams as well. Who's going to force the most turnovers and who can come up with like the best defensive stops at the end of the day. But I got to go with Missouri here. It's a low-scoring defensive battle, but I got to go with the Tigers here, 21-17 here in the Music City Bowl. Next up is the Texas Bowl. We got Baylor taking on LSU. This one will be held on December 31st, also known as New Year's Eve. So about the same day where the quarterfinals will take place on the playoff. This game will be at 3:30 Eastern Time, also on ESPN. LSU favored by 1.5 points in this one, and the over and under sitting at 59.5. Baylor is a sneaky, 8-4 team. They were a pretty big surprise this year in the Big 12. They were not really near as like a top contender for the Big 12, but this is a Baylor team that I didn't really watch as well all year long. All I heard about Baylor was that they got off to a slow start. It was like 2-4 or something, and then they go on to win the rest of their games. So Baylor might be looking, really good heading into the future. We just don't really know about it yet, but you look at LSU on the other side. This is an LSU team that has been a little bit up and down and sometimes a little bit disappointing. Garrett Nussmeier has been a good quarterback this year for LSU, but he's made, mistakes at time or two. But he's had a pretty good year, 3,000 yards on the season at throwing the football. I mean, if he probably does play in this one, I think LSU definitely will win it. But I tell you what, I think Baylor will come out really, competitive in this game. I really wouldn't be surprised if this game was really close. I mean, according to that spread there, this looks like a pretty even matchup, even though LSU might have a talent advantage standpoint, but we've seen LSU under Brian Kelly in some of these postseason games, and then also going back to Brian Kelly's, Notre Dame days, he hasn't really been good in the postseason, and also the last time we saw LSU taking on a Power 4 team, they beat UCLA, but, back then in the Big Ten, they took on USC. They lost that game. I think it's one of those close games for LSU, but I got to go with LSU here in this one. I think they do just enough here. It probably is a shootout between these two teams. This game can probably go two different ways. I mean, either the LSU defense steps up, or they're going to probably give up a lot of points in this game, or their offense can make a difference. And I think their offense probably can make the difference here. I got to go with LSU, though, just because of a talent standpoint, and they win this one 34-28 in the Texas Bowl. Next up, we got the Birmingham Bowl. Georgia Tech taking on Vanderbilt. This one will be held on December 27th at 3:30 Eastern Time on ESPN. Georgia Tech favored by 2.5 in the over and under sitting at 54.5. Both of these teams have been really solid teams all year long. Both of these teams are going to want to run the football. I think this is going to be a game that both teams will like to run the football. You got two really good quarterbacks that can really do damage at running the football with their legs. You got Haynes King of Georgia Tech and then Vanderbilt with, Diego Pavia. But, they also got physical running backs. Cedric Alexander is a really physical running back. But the thing is, when you get into bowl games, you don't really know who's playing in their bowl game because they either opt out or go to the NFL draft a little bit early, or maybe they enter the transfer portal. But, however, when you're entering the transfer portal, you can still play one more game with your team. I think this will be a competitive game. This might be the most competitive dogfight bowl game, probably in this 2024-25 postseason. Again, two quarterbacks and, two teams that I think will run the football pretty well in these, in this game. I think Georgia Tech, though, I do really trust their running game a little bit more than Vanderbilt. I get it. Vanderbilt's been a surprise team this year. They've been competitive against some of the top teams in the SEC. But I think Georgia Tech wins this one. I think it's close. And again, I think the running games are definitely going to be the difference here for both of these teams. But I got the Yellow Jackets coming up with a big defensive stop here. Probably somewhere around the 2-minute mark. I think Georgia Tech takes care of it, and they win this one 28-24 against Vanderbilt in the Birmingham Bowl. Next up, we got the Liberty Bowl, Texas Tech and Arkansas. Big 12 versus SEC matchup on December 27th at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Arkansas favored by 2.5 in the over and under sitting also at 59.5, or I shouldn't say also 59.5. I was looking back at that Baylor and LSU game, but Texas Tech has been a pretty quiet, Big 12 team. They've pulled off some upsets, especially that Iowa State game that was probably their biggest win of the season. So they've been a sneaky good 8-4 team. This is one of the more consistent programs in the Big 12. And then for Arkansas, it's kind of been an up and down year for Arkansas. They had a really tough schedule this year. I look back at that Oklahoma State game. That's probably a game they probably should have won, to be honest, because Oklahoma State ended up turning out to be terrible. So this is the second time Arkansas is going up against like a Big 12 conference team. They failed the first time, 38-31 in overtime against Oklahoma State. I gotta tell you, this one was really tough one to call. I get it. Arkansas is in the SEC. Texas Tech maybe not on the talent level of Arkansas, but I think this is a pretty even matchup. I think it is a high-scoring game. I think it probably comes down to the wire. It maybe comes down to a game-winning field goal or probably a turnover. I think it probably comes down to the field goal. I think Texas Tech pulls off the upset here. I'm going Red Raiders here to upset Arkansas. I really wouldn't call it an upset, but Arkansas is favored in this one by 2.5. But I got Texas Tech winning the Liberty Bowl 38-35. I know that sounds like a crazy prediction, but I'm going to go with it. Texas Tech defeats Arkansas 38-35. Next up, the Las Vegas Bowl, Texas A&M and USC. This one will be held on December 27th at 10:30 Eastern Time, so a late night game in the Pacific Time. Texas A&M favored by 2.5, the over and under sitting at 51.5. Both of these teams have had an up and down year. Texas A&M's been definitely a really good team this year. I know they're like 8-4, but this is a really good Texas A&M team. We saw that Connor Weeman did enter the transfer portal. Same thing with USC. Miller Moss, enter the transfer portal. Marcelo Reed's already the future at Texas A&M, but the question is, what will the future at quarterback be like here for this USC team? And this is a team that went 6-6 this year, so maybe kind of a disappointing year for the Trojans, but they had a very tough schedule this year. I get it, Texas A&M, or, I get it, USC, definitely should have done better, but they had a very tough schedule. Now, this game right here, Texas A&M definitely is the more talented team in my opinion. I think Marcelo Reed's going to give USC's defense some problems with running with the football. I think it will be a close game, though. USC defeated an SEC team before in Week 1 against LSU. Could they do that here for the second time in a row? I do trust Texas A&M, though, a little bit more. I think it comes down to maybe a little bit of a wire game, but I think Texas A&M is able to, to run out the clock for the rest of the game, and they get the win here. So I'm going Texas A&M to pull off a huge win against USC. Not a huge win, but I got Texas A&M winning this one 27-20 in the Las Vegas Bowl. Next up, we got the Independence Bowl. Marshall taking on Army, a Group of 5 bowl game here. This game will be held on December 28th, 9:15 Eastern Time. Army favored by 13. That is a very high spread there, and the over and under at 47.5. I get it. Marshall lost their head coach and everything. That's a big concern here for the Sun Belt champions. But you look at, this Army team, we've seen them look good at times and then sometimes bad at times. We'll see what they look like against Navy coming up tomorrow. That's the only college football game coming up tomorrow. I mean, that record could change for Army. Maybe it's at like 12-1 or like 12-2. Or actually, I should say 11-2. But yeah, Marshall, they lost their head coach, but I still think they'll make this a competitive game. They're going to have to prepare for that triple option, and I think that really wears down Marshall just a little bit. I mean, it takes a little bit of while to kind of prepare for that triple option, but they've had a full month, to kind of prepare it, almost a full month, because both of these teams played in like conference championship games. But I think Army's going to run out the clock. They're going to make this a low-scoring defensive kind of like game. But I got to go with Army here. I think Army's just been overall the better, conference champion team than Marshall has. Marshall's a pretty good team, though. I wouldn't be surprised if Marshall actually pulled off this win, but I got to go with Army here, 17-13. Again, I'm not expecting a lot of points to be scored in this game. I think it really comes down to who has a better defense. So that is my Independence Bowl prediction. We got the Alamo Bowl now. This one will be held on December 28th at 7:30 Eastern Time on ABC. Colorado favored by 3, and the over and under at 53.5. So I talked about this yesterday. Interestingly enough, we get 2 Big 12 teams in a bowl game. Yeah, that kind of doesn't make any sense toward me. But, these are 2 teams that just missed out on the Big 12 championship and maybe also a college football playoff spot. BYU has been a very big surprise team this year. I know Colorado's been a surprise this year as well, but I kind of expected Colorado to be a lot better this year. Now, the storylines in this game is Shadir Sanders and Travis Hunter going to be playing in this one. I'm going to, predict this game as like they're playing in it. So I think Colorado definitely is the better team, but I think BYU does make this a close game, but I do trust Colorado a lot more. Travis Hunter, if he does play, he'll make some big plays in this game. And Shadir Sanders and Travis Hunter are definitely not going to go down without a fight. They're not going to try to, lose their last game as Colorado players, because both of those guys are heading to the NFL next year. And I think Colorado, in second year in Deion Sanders, I think they grab 10 wins here. I'm going to go with Colorado. They go over that spread, 31-21. Again, if Shadir Sanders and Travis Hunter play, I think Colorado definitely goes over that spread, but if they don't play, maybe BYU wins it, or Colorado probably hangs on by 3. But that is my Alamo Bowl prediction, Colorado and BYU. Next up is the ReliaQuest Bowl. We got Alabama taking on Michigan. This one will be held on New Year's Eve at noon Eastern Time. Alabama favored by 11.5, and the over and under at 43.5. So I talked about this spread yesterday. That's a very high spread in my opinion, for Alabama. Alabama, a team that just missed out on the college football playoff, and then for Michigan, a team that just beat Ohio State. Yeah, I don't get it, why that spread is so big for Alabama. They're favored by double digits. Jalen Milroe, the question about him, is he going to be playing in this game? I really don't think so. I mean, I think my best guess would probably not, I don't think he will play in this game, but we're going to make this prediction as if he were playing in this game. Michigan on the other side, they've been, just a pretty average offense all year long. They haven't been the best offense, but their defense really has been the strength. I think they can make Alabama, make some, bad mistakes on the offensive side of the football, but I think the difference in this game is that Jalen Milroe is going to run the football, and it's going to give all Michigan some problems. Maybe in the second half, both of these teams, start off pretty slow, but second half, Alabama starts to come out really focused a little bit more. I still think Michigan makes this a competitive game. It's a rematch from last year's, playoff semifinal. But I think the players that were on that Alabama team last year, they're definitely wanting revenge on this Michigan team, and I think they get it. I think Alabama ends out first year Kalen DeBoer with 10 wins, and I think they win this one 20-14. So again, a low-scoring defensive battle, but I think Alabama's running game will be the difference here in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Next up, we got the Cheez-It Bowl. 2 9-3 teams, South Carolina taking on Illinois. This game will be held on December 31st on New Year's Eve. 3 o'clock Eastern Time on ABC. South Carolina favored by 10.5, and the over and under sitting at 47.5. So these are really 2 well-coached teams. South Carolina and Illinois looks like the future is pretty bright here for both of these teams. South Carolina, though, really has been, I think, in my opinion, a much more better team than Illinois. I get it. Illinois has been a really big surprise team this year, but I think the difference in this game is going to be Lenore Sellers running the football. This is kind of like similar to the Alabama-Michigan game. It will be a low-scoring defensive battle, but I think with Sellers running the football on this Illinois defense, it's definitely going to give Illinois some problems. So I didn't think it's a close game. I think it probably comes down to the wire. You never know, but I got to go with South Carolina here to pull off the win. I think, South Carolina ends Shane Beamer's, I think it's his 4th year, maybe 5th year if I can't remember correctly. I think it's his 4th year, and they end it with a 10-win season. So I got South Carolina getting this one 28-21. And then finally we got the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Again, one of my favorite bowl games that I look forward to ever since last year. This is a bowl game that just started last year. This game will be held on December 28th, 3:30 Eastern Time. It's Iowa State taking on Miami. Miami favored by 3.5, and the over and under sitting at 54.5. We saw that Cam Ward looks like he's going to be playing this game, so that's the good news there if you're a Miami fan. I think plus the good news about this Pop-Tarts Bowl, it's really close to where Miami is. They don't really have to travel that far. I mean, they're just traveling to Miami to Orlando, so it's not really a far place to go for Miami. This is an Iowa State team that's coming off that brutal loss in the Big 12 championship. I think Iowa State's defense, is going to have some problems here if Cam Ward does in fact play. But, I think it will be a competitive game. I just feel like with Cam Ward, playing, it's definitely going to be a big disadvantage here for the Cyclones. And I think Cam Ward goes out there and puts on a really good performance. So I'm going to go with Miami here in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. They get the giant Pop-Tart and, eat it and everything. So I got Miami winning this one 31-17. Again, I think Iowa State's a really good, well-coached team, but I don't think they really have an offense that can go up against this Miami defense. And plus, Cam Ward playing in this game is definitely a big disadvantage here for Iowa State. So I'm taking Miami in the Pop-Tarts Bowl 31-17. So those are my 2024-25 college football bowl predictions heading into the postseason. Let me guys know what you think about my bowl predictions. Give me your bowl predictions on these 10 games down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.